Hello, my friends. I'm going back kind of to my roots of evaluating what's going on in Russian state media. I haven't done this for quite some time. I've just been following news events. So I saw this where Russia is raising living standards by embracing traditional values. So says Jackson Hinkle. Now, Jackson Hinkle's a real piece of work. If you just look about, follow him for some period of time, you'll find that he's a very caustic commentator who kind of hates Zelensky. This organization, Digital Forensic Researching and Analytics Center, an Indian outfit, calls him a archetypical paragon of misinformation in current social media landscape. And I like the guy. He hates Zelensky. Zelensky is just ISIS for Western Europe. Zelensky is a war prostitute. Merry Christmas to everyone except Zelensky. And I don't quite get where his animosity comes from, but okay. I mean, he's entitled to his opinion, although I think he's kind of a pretty bad guy. Now, I was talking to Zach the Russian the other day, and we had two interviews, one on my channel, one on his channel. The one on his channel, he triggered something. He said something that triggered a thought in me that I don't know why I didn't make the connection before, but traditional values, as they talk about it, are only those that serve Russia. They're in service to Russia. Like, I hold pretty traditional values. I'm a conservative guy, but it's not in service to the state. It's in service to the values, and the state happens to align with those values in the United States pretty well, generally speaking. I think you should be honest. I don't think you should hurt people. You go down the list of essentially 10 commandments, those kind of things are inscribed into our law. It's different in Russia. Traditional values are are used to prop up the state. I'm not sure if I spent that out very well, but here you can hear that conversation if you go to Zach the Russian's page. Okay, back to where we were with Jackson Hinkle. So he is making some pretty crazy claims, and we're going to hear that together. So here we go.
And I am now joined in the studio by Jackson Hinkle, political analyst and the host of The Dive with Jackson Hinkle. Thank you so much.
Okay, so he's a political analyst because he hosts it used to be YouTube. He was banned from YouTube. Now it's on Rumble or Twitter, a social media show. And he strikes me as the child star that had too much fame too quickly, because he's only in his 20s, and but he's all in the bag for both Russia and for Palestine.
For joining us. First, let's start with a look at Western media and their reaction to the Russian president's latest comments on Macron, which made immediate headlines. What do you make of their reference to nuclear weapons if NATO ground troops become involved in Ukraine?
Well, I think it's just so hypocritical for all of the Western media and all the Western politicians to be freaking out about what Putin is saying. I mean, look, the Russians have made every single step possible to achieve peace for years and years and years before February.
Well, no, that's hypocritical. The Russians have not been trying to make peace for years and years and years. Not peace as we know it. Peace on their terms, certainly. You submit to us and then we have peace. But that's not the same thing. And Putin was saying something yesterday where I was talking about in the three big stories last night about how if any NATO troops come into Ukraine, that's nuclear war. But Russian troops can go into Ukraine, and that's not how. Why is that fair? Why are Russian troops allowed to be in Ukraine, but NATO troops are not? It's not your country. I suppose if you were saying if NATO troops come into Russia, that would be nuclear war. But do you understand? I mean, if we're going to talk hypocritical, let's talk hypocritical.
February 24, 2022, and thereafter, as we learned from former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, who came and said that Boris Johnson nuked the peace deal. So if they're so upset about Putin defending Russian civilization...
Again, the peace deal on Putin's terms, which would allow him to go back and rearm and rest and get ready for part two.
In Russian culture, why are they trying to tear it apart? Why are they provoking him as they've done this whole time?
Right, it's the West provoking
Putin.
Putin.
Of having to threaten nuclear use. It makes no sense.
And I know you've been attending the forums on multipolarity taking place in Moscow. What prompted you to attend, and what do you make of it so far?
Well, the world is changing in a way that is going to allow countries like Russia and China to lift nations that have been under the boot of U.S. imperialism for so many decades to
Under the boot of U.S. imperialism, but what about Russian imperialism? I mean, you're seeing in Ukraine, writ large, Russian imperialism. That's all that this is. But
finally
wow.
have a chance at true sovereignty, true freedom. And that's what multipolarity is all about ending this unipolar system of imperialism. And when I learned that there was an event
He's getting great points for Russian talking points. Like if we were playing a drinking game or something, like he'd be under the table at this point.
happening in Moscow, and not only about multipolarity, but also to celebrate traditionalism.
Oh, here we
something
go.
that is truly upheld here in Russia. I knew I had to go. There was tons of great speakers and a lot of really educational events that took place within the forum. So I was happy to be here.
Is there anything else you can tell us about the importance of such an event like the Second Congress of the International Russophile Movement? How do they counter the stream of Russophobic statements we've been seeing from the United States and its allies?
Okay, so first, this whole idea of Russophobia is kind of silly, unless you live in Ukraine, in which case you should be aware that, or in Poland or Estonia or something along, in that case you should be aware that Russia does have ambitions to do bad things to you. But Russophobia by the West, like in America, oh, they're just afraid of Russia and that's why they're supplying. No, we weren't really even thinking about you until you invaded, and then we're on, this can't stand. So it's not Russophobia. This is this made-up nonsense.
As Putin said in his conversation with Tucker Carlson, you really can't beat Western propaganda. So
Okay, whenever you're tempted to preface what you have to say with, as Putin said, just realize that whatever follows is nonsense. Okay, and you really can't beat Western propaganda? This is Putin trying to frame what is propaganda, which is him beating Western propaganda.
I think that what Russia has been able to accomplish so well is actually just uplift the standard of living here by embracing the traditional values that are near and dear to all of the regions of this country and all the people, all the ethnicities and religions here. So I think just embracing that and also embracing.
But do they really embrace it, or do they pay lip service to it in order to tighten the screws down that go from a... Again, in that video with Zach the Russian, we were talking about how I said that it felt like we were watching the re-Sovietization of Russia. And he clarified for me where it's really... what they're doing is going from authoritarian to totalitarian. I said he gets an A for that. That's really right. They're becoming more totalitarian over time, but they're doing that by using traditional values as the foil to serve as a thing to clamp down on the people.
Embracing all of the various values of people from Africa, Latin America, China, everyone who is present at this forum is how you can actually accomplish that.
Okay, and so from this point, they're just going to digress and talk about other things. But like, one, Hinkle has no credibility. He just goes over Russian talking points, and what he talks about is traditional values. Your average American conservative churchgoer hears and thinks, oh, well, that's a good thing, traditional values. But it's nothing like what your average churchgoer in America actually understands as traditional values when they're going to church and being in the community and trying to be nice to their neighbors and get along with people. It's not the same thing. All right, that's what I wanted to show you here with Jackson Hinkle as he's spouting this nonsense. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes. Tell me what you thought below, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.